Welcome to the Biz Bash podcast, where we make biz strategy a piece of cake. I'm Elizabeth.
And I'm Cami, but you might know us better as Eliza Ann Calligraphy and Cami Monet. We want to help you, our fellow stationers, artists, and calligraphers, confidently build a profitable and personality-driven creative biz.
We're here to share our honest-to-goodness advice and actionable strategies for ambitious artists.
So put on your party hat, quit being a procrastinator gator, and let's get this party started.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Biz Birthday Bash podcast. We have Holly of Sablewood Paper Co. with us again today. Hello. Holly.
Hi.
Thank you so much for filling in for Cami and being a co-host for me while she's on maternity leave. We're just excited to have you and super thankful. You guys, today we are talking about taking the reins with your clients. We know that this is a pain point, literally, for so many people. Holly was just telling me it doesn't matter like how many years you've been in your business. It doesn't matter if you're brand new. It doesn't matter if you have years under your belt. You are always going to have situations where, you know, sometimes it results in you firing a client and sometimes they fire you. So But, you know, to avoid situations like that, we thought we would take some time just to talk about some principles and things that it's good to have in place to just, I don't know, protect you as well as you can and to manage some of these stressful situations as well as you can. Basically, the more you can set up expectations up front, I think the more benefit it'll be to you down the road. But I'm excited to speak about this. I mean, everyone always wants to know about just bad client situations, like what to do.
Yeah. I mean, I think, Elizabeth, you probably can attest to this too. Like a lot of the questions that you get as an educator are like, I have a client who wants XYZ, but like we agreed on ABC. How do I stop this from happening? Or like, we're about 16 hours into a project that I only budgeted 8 hours for. What am I doing wrong? And that's just a thing that you kind of learn with time, but hopefully some of these tips and tricks will help you like lessen that sting a little bit when it eventually does happen to you.
Yeah.
Because it will.
Because it will happen. And just to like not panic, because I think like sometimes the first thing we do is like we throw our hands in the air and we're like, the world's over. It's ending.
I'm going to shut my business down. I can't do this anymore.
And sometimes all we need to do is take a day to think about it, to think about our response, what that's going to look like when somebody's asking for something or being difficult. But let's go ahead and start at the very beginning of when you are booking clients for a project. I mean, I think that oftentimes there's red flags, right? That can come up in conversations. And I know this wasn't originally in our notes, but I think might be a fun thing to talk about before we even talk about like signing a contract is keeping tabs on kind of your innate gut feeling, right? Of like how a situation is going to go long term. So if you can think of a couple, Holly, like what are some like red flags that come up for you when you're in conversations with the leads that you're like, maybe this isn't like a long-term fit?
Well, the biggest red flag that I think of, it literally gives me a little bit of PTSD. Like my heart's beating faster thinking about it. A few years ago now, because it's 2022. Oh my gosh. I had this mom of the bride reach out to me and she filled out my contact form, but she just gushed. And she was like, I love your work, like 18 exclamation points. Like, I would really love you to do my daughter's invitations for us. When can we meet? And I was like, okay, well, this is great. She actually values stationery. I wasn't getting this red flag vibe from her. We talked on the phone. She sounded great, but still very gushy. And then we met in person with her daughter. So now we're like 16 emails in, an hour-long phone call, and now we're meeting in person. And I sit down with the invitations that we've already like talked about on the phone and said like, this is the direction we're going. And the first thing out of the daughter's mouth is, I haven't even gotten engaged yet. And I was like, I'm sorry, you what? And she was like, well, it's probably going to happen like this weekend. And I was like, I'm sorry, your mother and I have already designed like this entire invitation suite. I've spent hours doing this already because she's signed a contract and she's paid. So like, what? And like the red flags did not stop after that. Like I have so many things that I could tell you about this client that were all red flags, but like when somebody just tells you how much they love your work and everything, you don't really see that as a red flag, but it is absolutely love bombing. Like it is 100% like when you get in a relationship with somebody or you start talking to them and they just start like showering you with compliments or like buying you gifts. Like that's like a form of abuse. Like it is a precursor to future abuse.
Dang, I honestly never thought about it like that way. I don't think I've had somebody necessarily like use that tactic on me when booking before, but that is kind of
very
crazy.
Effective.
Yeah.
Because it's really difficult to say no to somebody when they're like, I love your work so much. Like, it's just a very odd thing, but it actually prepared me for the other thing that happened, another separate client. So after I got PTSD from this mother, I had another client reach out to me via her planner, and the planner kind of hooked us up together. And the bride was like, I want rose gold vinyl on acrylic for my seating chart, and I want this shade. And I was like, well, there's only one shade of vinyl for rose gold. So unless you're cool with this, then we can't work together. And she was like, well, I don't really want that. So what can you do? And I said, I can't do anything. Sorry. Bye. And she wrote me 6 emails after that saying like how much she wanted me to work with her. Is there anything I can do? She doesn't need that shade of rose gold. Please, please, please. And I just had to keep saying no over and over because that red flag was just massive. It was just like pulsing in the background of every email that she sent. But I never would have really thought about it like unless I had had that first big experience with that love bombing mother of the bride. Like it just would have been like, oh, I'm so honored that you like my stuff. This is so great. But it's not cool. It's not good.
Yes. When people like beg to have you back, I think that's a little bit of a, I've already kind of like put up that sign of like, I don't want to continue this relationship, you know? And that could be really hard. Also, like kind of when you're in the middle, you know, kind of what happened to me when I was like with the save the dates on like the one client and like, and I got fired and that's okay. Like I wasn't the right fit and we parted ways, but I hadn't done it first because I felt bad. I felt that element of guilt of not seeing it all the way through. And so I'm glad that we ended up parting ways. And I know that they had a happy end result with somebody else, which is freaking fantastic. And it wasn't me, which was good because you know who it was. So
it wasn't me either, guys.
It wasn't you either. Yeah. Spoiler, it was also not Holly, but if it's not meant for us, a lot of times it can be meant for somebody else, but to be able to like listen to our gut feeling, I never would have sorted that away with like manipulation, but I totally see that now with like, no, I love your work so much. I love it so much. Please, like, let's work this out. And then you also have the opposite problem, right? Another red flag of like, they're sending you pictures of all work and none of it's yours.
Yes. Yeah.
And then you're like, well, this also, how is this going to be beneficial for all of us long term if, you know, you're not really seeing things within my portfolio of work that you're going to like.
And if somebody does that, and I have a lot of people that still do that to this day, I usually respond to them and just say like, can you please send me some examples of my own work that you've liked or enjoyed? And if they don't send me anything back, if they just say like, no, this is kind of the vibe we're going for, then that's when you know it's time to just part ways. Like you won't ever be able to please that customer if they can't find one thing that you do. So, you know, that there's definitely a way of finding out if you're going to be a good fit, even if they send you like all the wrong things.
Yeah. So let's talk about that then, like the ways that we do find out, because first of all, I think there's so much to be said just for like what lines of communication are acceptable. And even some of that comes even before we get to the contract point, right? Like you said, you spent an hour on the phone with that mother of the bride. Do you think you would ever do that again?
No. Absolutely not. In fact, the PTSD is so real. I now like cap it at 20 to 30 minutes for a discovery call. Like that is it. If we go over that, like I'm charging you for it. So And I try to frame it so that it's like, I'm being respectful of your time. I know that you're busy, rather than, hey, I'm just here for however long you need me. You know, it's setting those expectations, like you said at the beginning of the episode. It's very, very important, and it's life-changing.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So I think for me personally, I was always willing to do like a phone call at the beginning with somebody, like you said, kind of that discovery call.
Mm-hmm.
When I was near the end of my invitation times, the end times, if you will.
The end times. Oh my gosh, so apocalyptic.
I know. I had started making my initial questionnaire form very, very simple, which led to like a booking form for a phone call. And then on the phone call was when I would ask them the way more in-depth questions.
Okay.
And I would kind of like fill out what used to be my long form that used to just be like client public facing for anyone, whoever. They had to at least take that first step to schedule a phone call with me in the first place. I wanted to know that they were like serious enough that they were willing to talk to me for a little bit, not too long, right? Like not too long within like my constraints of what I wanted, but that was a good way for me to also get a little bit of a read on them as well. There's only so much that you can pick up over email communication, if you will. A lot of it is something you can tell a little more when you like hear somebody's voice and how are they speaking to you? Are they speaking to you in a kind manner? You know, things like that.
Yeah, absolutely. And it can go the opposite way too. Like, it doesn't always mean if somebody's, you know, kind of weird in an email that they're going to be weird over the phone. Like, sometimes their emails just like, it's just like a lot of really short sentences. And then you get on the phone with them and you just like click, and then you can take off running together. So like, you can definitely decide if you want to move forward after you have a really quick phone call. That's, I definitely recommend that, like getting that voice to voice experience going.
Yeah, for sure. And then I don't know about you, but like if they ever need phone calls throughout the rest of the process, like if there's something they want to talk about, that's not a like you just call me and I pick up the phone whenever situation. That is like we decide on email, we agree on a mutual time. I will call you this day at this time. Whether you do that through Calendly or you do that manually by figuring it out, that was always much better for me. I literally still have like a mother of the bride in my phone whose contact comes up with like her name in all caps with like red sirens next
like,
to
do
it.
not answer.
Do not pick this up, because I had forgotten to add her into my contact, and a Georgia number called me one day and I picked it up and answered it. Guess who it was? It was her. And I had just told her in an email 15 minutes before that I don't have time to talk today.
Oh my gosh, how rude of her.
I know, but how dumb of me, because like here I am picking the phone up because I didn't realize it was her.
Yeah, but like just because you're not available to talk to her doesn't mean that you can't answer the phone. That was so wrong of her to call you.
Yes, I know. There was a lot going on there in that situation too. That we could talk a little bit about later in the episode, especially when it comes to like contracts and agreements, because I just think it's a good story about kind of like holding your own and standing your ground a little bit. Yeah. But let's talk about contracts, why don't we?
Yes, let's do. That's a very important next step, or first step, really.
Yes, first step before any project begins is having them sign the contract and having payment.
Yes.
It's not just
one or the other. Please don't start a project without payment. Please.
Yes.
Just setting yourself up for disappointment.
You need the payment and the contract to start things up front. Cami and I do have a contract in our shop. If you go to bizbirthdaybatch.com/shop, our contract is in there if you guys need a stationary contract of any kind. Holly, I can't remember if you also have, I know you have a styled shoot contract, which is also a good thing to mention, because styled shoot people can be clients too.
Absolutely. Yes. Sometimes styled shoots, like people will pay you to create stuff for those. So if you're getting payment for a styled shoot, absolutely a contract. But you're also shelling out a bunch of money to be part of it anyways. So I think a contract is a good thing. Yeah. But I wanted to point out your USPS mailing contract.
Yes, the USPS mailing agreement.
swear by that. Like, I hear about people all the time that are like, I won't mail anything for my clients. And I'm like, I won't let my clients mail anything because I don't trust them. Like, I do this. This is my job. I'm the expert. I'm like laying all of these rules out for you. You sign that. You know the expectations. Again, there's expectations. It's just like the golden rule. But and I'm going to knock on wood right now, but it has literally, I have never had a problem with a client since implementing that contract. But before then, I'd have people say like, hey, like this address got destroyed in the mail or whatever by running through the machine, or like this client or this customer, this guest lives across the street from this other guest and they got theirs first, but the first guest didn't. And I'm like, this is the mail. So like having contracts like that in place is so important. So, so important. And spend anything that you have to get a good contract, because it's a one-time thing. And then you never have to look at it again.
Yeah. I agree. Ideally, you can always make amendments if you need to, which people do all the time. But what I will say is, you know, a lot of times I get people saying to me like, well, like, I can't guarantee that they read it, or like, do they even read it? Like, I don't know. It just doesn't seem like they're even paying attention to a contract, and it doesn't matter. Like,
they're adults.
Even if they didn't read it, they signed it, which is really what's important, because that gives you so much like leverage and guidance for later down the road when a problem comes up, when they want to do a third, fourth, fifth, sixth round of designs, and you can refer back to the part of your contract that says, nope, we have 3, you know, we have 3, and this is how much you have to pay if you want to go over that to do more, or just no, we're not doing more, period, you know? It gives you grounds to stand on, and it doesn't matter if they didn't do their own due diligence upfront to read it and they signed it, you know?
Yeah. Because sidebar, when you get terms and conditions from companies and you have to scroll through it to click accept, do you read that? Because I don't. I should, but I don't. But that's the same principle. If you put your name on this, it's legally binding. And so you can't just babysit every single client that walks in the door. They are adults. They know what they're doing. That's just the way that the cookie crumbles. They are responsible for reading that fine print.
And you can highlight, like sometimes like highlight or bold things if you feel like it's something that's super important. Like I know that people have highlighted like the time frame when they need the guest list, right?
Yeah.
Of like, I need this by X date. Please pay attention to this section.
This is very, very important.
Or, you know, like feedback is expected within 3 business days. If you delay, like here's what happens. You get pushed back such and such amount of weeks, which can delay your entire project, you know? Things like that maybe you want to point out that are those, I don't want to say like life-altering, project-altering.
But they can be in the wrong hands.
Right. For sure. So yeah, there is so much to be said for just having a contract on your side. And really it's protecting you, but it's also protecting the client, okay? Because you're bound to that as well. Like you're bound to provide a product for them, a service for them in a timely manner. There should be clauses within there that explain what the client's responsible for, what the vendor's responsible for. It often explains how your work can and cannot be used to therefore prevent people from just reproducing it or replicating it for whatever else they want in the future, you know, whatever they want for the wedding. So that is something that you need to have up front.
Yes. That's a big one.
Yeah, that's a big one. Also, I love that Holly kind of already covered like being honest about what can or can't be done for a project, like just within, let's say, like, does it defy the laws of physics? Or in this case, Holly's case.
I love that phrasing.
does it defy the colors of acrylic that are out there? You're like, literally, we are like, this is the color.
This is it.
I am not God. I cannot like randomly poof manufacture. You're like ideal.
I'd be so rich. I'd just poof. Here's your invitation. Poof. Here you go.
Yeah. Yeah. The laws of physics line is something that I've heard Britt say before, especially for letterpress, because she has to explain to clients like, no, this defies literally like the laws of like what this art form allows.
Right.
Like
Yes.
we cannot, like physically cannot produce that, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And just being willing to like be honest and have that conversation. And then you had that lady who was like begging to have Holly back, and she was like, no, not even back, right? She was just begging you to like work with her in the first place.
Yes. Oh my gosh. No contract, no payment, just like, please talk to me. But a thing that I get a lot from clients who want like digital invitations is they always want gold. I'm like, that is like a perfect what we can and can't do for your project. Like gold that's not a digitally printed color. What you want is yellow or mustard. If you want gold, then you have to do foil. Like that is just period, dot, like hard stop. You just cannot print gold digitally. Oh yeah,
like flat printed. Right.
Yeah.
Sorry. For a second, when I heard digital, I was like, my mind went to computer, and no, you just mean like flat printing.
Yeah. Sorry, I call it digital printing.
No, you're good. Like I do too. I just had like a brain fart moment.
Totally fine. I'll forgive it, Elizabeth.
Thank you.
But yes, that like, yeah, I could like go on with a whole bunch of examples of that. But that, especially since stationery is not something that a lot of people know a lot about when they reach out to you. Like this is probably the first time that they're doing invitations on any scale. So you have to be the educator and set those expectations and say like, if this is what you want, then you need to do X, Y, Z, and be very firm about that. Like we unfortunately just can't do that for you.
Yep. Yeah. There's so much of our job that is educating. Like you have to have the patience and the bandwidth to do a little bit of that to kind of explain to people to a point, you know, why things are the way that they are. If they keep pushing back on you, I mean, that might be a red flag up front. Like if you haven't like booked that client or worked with them yet. But a good way to do it too is that this is something Cami has always kind of lived by. She was like, the answer for the client is always, yes, we can do that by doing X, Y, and Z, and here's how much it would cost, you know?
Yes. I love it.
So the answer is always yes. You just have to be honest about like what goes into that. What will it cost? You know, like, do they want that? They didn't like how the watercolor venue turned out the first time. They want it repainted. Yes, of course we can repaint it for you. That's $1,000, you know? So she's
$1 million.
$1 million. That's how she like to frame everything in her mind is like, yeah, my answer is always yes, but here's like the provisions that come with that. And then that gives your client the decision of either moving forward or being like, oh no, never mind. It's like,
that's such a great way to frame it though, because it's very positive for your client. It's not, no, we can't do that. Here are some other options. It's, yes, we can do that. Here are some other options. And like, this is what you're going to expect to pay.
Yes.
And so you've like hit all of those pain points with your client right away. They don't need to like send you follow-up questions or anything. It's just all right there up front, ready to go.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Excellent advice.
So much of our life is like spent in email, man. Like when you like look at those threads of things that go back and forth. So let's talk a little bit about like communication, like what we're okay with and like what we're not okay with, because I would love to hear from you how you're managing your daily interactions with clients from a communication standpoint. And like, and what do you do when they ask for something that's like outside the scope of like, I want to Zoom call with you, or I want the X, Y, and Z, you know, other things like, or texting, you know, I'd love to hear like what your boundaries are with clients from a communication perspective and how you let them know, like, what do you do, whether it's like within an email signature or whatever, that they kind of know what to expect from you and what's okay and what's not.
That's a really good question, because I think everybody does it way differently or just different from each other. I pretty much try to keep all communication via email because I don't like how things can get lost via phone calls. Like somebody might hear me say something that I didn't actually say because that's what they wanted to hear. So I like to have a paper trail, and I don't do anything outside of email. So the only phone call that anybody gets from me is the discovery call, which is about 30 minutes up front. If they need to like talk through something, like how do I send my guest list, for example, like I don't have Word, so how do I use like Google Sheets or something? Then I'm happy to walk them through that over the phone. But I definitely do not do text message because I just don't like clients having access to my phone like that. My phone is very sacred to me, and my time on my phone is very sacred, and it is not for business. Like, it is for personal use only. So by keeping all of my communication just on email, it's really streamlined things for people. So they know I can only reach Holly Monday through Friday between 9 a.m. and 6 p.m. If it's outside of that, like, she'll get back to me when she's back in the office. And when I'm really, really bogged down with emails, I'll actually like put up a delayed message response that'll say, usually I get back to you within 24 hours, but right now I need 72 hours because things are crazy. So, I appreciate your understanding. But Zoom calls are a hard no, unless that's like part of the discovery. If you want to do the Zoom call as a discovery call, great. But like, I don't do any designing over Zoom. That's not a thing.
No, it's
if you want it to be a thing, you're going to have to pay me triple because that sounds miserable.
Yeah. Spoiler alert. I was asked to do that anyways.
Yes. Yeah. And so was I. And that was an instant, like, put the foot down. But I think the moral of the story for all of this is like, set your communication expectations with your client kind of upfront. Like, hey, I like to communicate via email. If there's a different way that you would like to communicate, let me know. But my emails to you will be email format. And then clients are usually like cool with that. They don't usually push back once you've given like, this is how it works, because again, this is the first time they've probably done invitations. So they don't really know how things go, and they're taking the lead from you. So you have to be the strong leader in this situation and say what it is that you want them to do.
Yeah. And that also means that you can bend the rules a little bit, like when you want to and when you're comfortable with it. It's always like personal preference. I specifically had like one of the clients that I was working with last year, a rescheduled client. They had sometimes people would just get very, very particular ideas of what they want for something. In this case, it was an envelope liner, a specific type of paper, like some Italian marbled something or another, this or that.
Yeah.
And
I
was like,
my red flag mother of the bride was like that too.
Yeah.
So I get it. This
whole project, man, I am thankful that I made it through alive, and did not get fired from that one. but
sadly,
yeah,
question mark.
So the wedding planner did, though. Okay.
Oh my gosh. This sounds like a journey.
Yeah. I can only imagine. Like, I do think it really did like turn out beautiful. It was a unique situation. Also unique in that they were local, and like a lot of my clients aren't necessarily local.
Yeah.
So I had done like a consultation like at their home, like pre-COVID and all these things. And she had a very specific idea of what she wanted for the envelope liners. And no matter what options I was providing from all these different paper sources, none of them were like quite the right fit. And so one day she like emailed me and was like, I was at a boutique by the sea and I found this paper that I think would work for the envelope liners. And I was like, at that point, I was like, just buy it and drop it off. Like, seriously. We have like reached that point of the project. Like, just please bring it by. And then we ran into, and so in that moment for me, that was more of like I'm like, you know what? They found what they wanted. Let's just like move forward. This is not worth like pushing back to be like, this isn't how I normally do things, because it's like not how I normally do things, but like, let's just save everyone's like sanity. Okay.
Is this the hill I want to die on?
No, it was not the hill I wanted to die on. And then we had like a similar situation kind of with the postage of like the options that I had provided just weren't quite like what they were looking for. Oh, but we found some postage at like a vintage shop that we would like to use. And I said, and do you know what I said? I said, yes, of course we can do that. Here's what will happen, though. I will be done with the project at this point. I will do the calligraphy for the envelopes. I will give them to you. You guys will do the postage and you guys will mail them. And so, and I said, there's no change in fee for that. There's no change in price. Like, if that's the decision you guys want to make, it will be in your hands. Like, you guys have to sign off on that and understand basically that, like, I would be done at this point in the project. And so once again, the answer was yes. It's like, yes, of course we can do that. But my involvement in the project will end here. Especially because I had seen how the situation with the liner had gone. And I was like, I'm not about to be over here picking through some like postage that we found in such and such shop, you know? But I also want you guys to have your vision and what you want. So when they came to pick that up, when she came to pick up all the invitations, I was very proud that I had made it to that. This was like handmade paper, letterpress printed, like quite different from kind of like what I normally do. It's just that we kind of like ended up there without me realizing we were going to end up there, you know? It was like one of those projects. And I wrote up a release form before they came to pick it up because I wanted that signature that is like, when I take this, I am accepting this as is. Like, my involvement with the project is done. You are taking them. They're in your hands now. They're in God's hands now, whatever.
Bless
like,
and release.
I'm no longer involved. Like, this is like the end of this project. And I just want this to be obvious to everyone involved that like, this is the end.
And they were cool that it worked perfectly, right?
It worked so well, Holly. Okay. And here's why it worked well. Because within an hour, there are certain, for me, there's certain clients that I will text with because sometimes it's a little easier to coordinate certain things. This is one of those situations where she was picking something up for me.
Yeah.
It was just easier to keep tabs on it that way. And I kid you not, within an hour of her having left and taken the invitations and signed this form, she texted me and asked, is there any way that you could address the inner envelopes for us? So what we had done was that we had like a larger envelope set. The outer was addressed, but the inner was not. But it had the envelope liner in the invitation set. So it was more like serving as a protective measure.
Yeah.
And there had never been we had known this all along. There had never been any previous discussion about inner envelope names or anything like that. And so she asked me after having picked them up, hey, is there any way that the inner envelopes could be addressed? And I was like, I'm not available to do that. I'm sorry. You know, and that was like, well, yeah, that was like the end of that. And I think that's like one of those gut intuition things was I was like, I need to have this signed off because like I know my boundaries and I need for this to like be done when I think it's done. Right. Like, not for
oh my gosh,
people to like grasp at straws, if you will, or try to add one more thing randomly. And so that was like, you know, what do you say when it was like current Elizabeth was like patting like past Elizabeth on the back? Like, good job for like thinking about that one.
Oh my gosh.
I had zero guilt in just saying like, no, I'm so sorry. Like I can't do that for you. I knew the project was going to be over at that point. I don't know what they did. I don't know if they had someone else do them. I don't know if they decided
doesn't matter. It's not your project.
Keep them as is. I don't know. That was it. That she had left the check with me and like everything.
That's it. That actually is a really good segue into something that we didn't have in our notes, but scope creep is like, oh my gosh, it is so real. There's so many different ways to tackle that, but first and foremost, like the contract is so important. Having that initial phone call, email, text, whatever it is that you decide to do, where you decide exactly what it is that you are doing for this project. And then also what I do is follow up with a rough sketch of what the project will probably look like as it sits right now, that they actually have to physically sign off on. And that really makes them like sit down and take note and say, okay, like I'm happy with this direction that we're going in. Let's move forward. So there's like 3 checkpoints that you have to go through. You know, you've got your contract that lays out everything, your phone call, your email, your text, whatever, that solidifies that. And then you've got some sort of rough sketch, or like, even if it's a subcontract of some kind that lays everything out in bullet points, so that everybody is very clear about what the outcome of the project is going to look like. And there's still going to be clients that like try to get more out of you, regardless of like signing a bunch of documents or whatever it is. Some clients are just like that. And you have to be very firm with that and be very aware of what's going on, because they can like sneak it in there. They're real sneaky, these clients.
I know.
They're swoopers. They just will like find tiny little ways, like, just make this really small change. You know, can we move this like a half an inch to the left? Or whatever it is. This is a really big problem with collection invitations or semi-customs, whatever you call them. But like the scope creep there is, you have to be uber firm about that.
Yes.
Because it's really easy to shift into custom territory in that way.
Yeah. It can happen really easily. And I was going to say that there's something to be said for, as you gain more experience, there's things that you understand at the beginning of a project, right? I used to tell people on our consultation calls, like, you don't have to know, like, right this second if you want wax seals, or you don't have to know right this second if you want, like, what postage we want. That is something we can figure out later in the process. You do, however, have to let me know up front, do you want these calligraphy addressed or not?
Yeah.
Like, we can't add in calligraphy later because of the time that it takes in the timeline. We could downgrade the calligraphy later if you decide like you don't want that. That would be okay. Or like, do you want letterpress or foil? That's not something we can change our minds about later. Like, we need to know up front if the project is going to be letterpressed or foiled because of the time that it takes to include that. So I tried to let my clients and my leads know, like, where they have a little bit of wiggle room and like where they didn't, you know?
Yes.
Because I'm like, you can always ask later, but the chances are that my timeline could be so full at that point that I don't have, you know, I can't all of a sudden decide I want, you know, that you want to do your calligraphy addressing. And I'd have to say my timeline doesn't allow for that. And we didn't book that at the beginning when I needed that information.
And I think that exact thing is why it's so important to have a really comprehensive questionnaire that either you fill out while you're on the phone with them, like you do, Elizabeth, or I send them directly to the client, like a really long questionnaire to fill out. And like, either way is fine and they both work. But like, that really helps the clients sit down and think about what it is they want exactly, and decide like, okay, well, I want letterpress and I want calligraphy addressing. And those are firm, hard things that I must absolutely have. Okay, now we know that we need 4 weeks of production time rather than just a week for digital or flat printing. Like, it sets expectations all around. So it's a good conversation to have, and one that I honestly don't think that you can skip. Like, there's no shortcut through that conversation. That is a must-have.
No, that's an absolutely a must-have. And it really is crazy when I think about it, just like the amount of time we take, going back to the point about educating people, the amount that we take to explain techniques and why things are the way they are, or why letterpress may be perceived as more luxury than flat printing or digital. You know, all these reasons we have in place. Like, sometimes when I think about my intro calls, like, if you will, or those like onboarding calls, felt more like me just like talking and explaining stuff sometimes than like actually getting information from them.
Yes. Yeah. I usually at the end of those kind of look at the phone and I'm like, I'm really sorry that I just talked at you for about 20 minutes, but you needed to know all of that. Yeah. So please take the next 5 to 10 minutes to tell me what you would like. And they're always like, oh my God. But it's so true.
Hit them with all of that information up front, and just hope that they can, take it and that they can handle it and process all of it.
Yeah.
Let's talk just about situations where like sometimes you do have to say no, and how to handle that diligently and like kindly with a client. Maybe examples if you have some of them, because we talked about taking the tactic of always trying to say like, yes, we can, and here's what that means. But there's always going to be a situation where we simply have to say no.
Yes.
So what to do when that situation arises?
So this year especially, and I know that everybody's business is in a different place right now, but I know that there are a ton of weddings happening in 2022, from postponements or whatever. People just want to get married because they've been cooped up for however long, wherever they live. So wedding invitation designers and just vendors in general are being overwhelmed by inquiries. And whether you are actually booked or not, sometimes these inquiries are not a good fit for you. So you have to find a way to say no, and you have to get over all of these like feelings that you have of guilt or whatever of saying no to somebody, because saying no is not going to be the end of the world for them. So once you detach yourself from this whatever feeling you have about the word no, it becomes a lot easier to actually reply in an email or a phone call no to someone. But like I just got an inquiry the other day for an invitation design for, I think it was like August. And August is getting kind of crazy. Like everybody in Seattle gets married in July or August. Like those are the days.
Yep.
So it's a little nuts, but the vision just really wasn't lining up with what I do, like portfolio wise. And so I had the option and the opportunity to either take the job and just kind of suffer through it and get some money, or say no. And I opted for the second response. And so just said like, thank you so much for reaching out to me. I'm honored that you want me to create your invitations for you. I'm not available at this time, but here are 3 local people that I absolutely love that I think would fit with your vision. And the key here is to find other professionals that are near or far, but that match that client's vision.
Yep.
You don't want to just send a blind referral to someone just because you like their work or whatever. It has to jive with what the client wants, or they're just going to run into the same problem with that new vendor. But, and then also give that vendor a heads up that you're like sending work their way.
Yeah, for sure.
But like, no it's a hard word to say, but you don't have to be crazy about it. It doesn't have to be like something wild and like make something up. It can be the absolute truth. And it's not gonna hurt anybody in the long run. So just say
and
it.
the key is to just, to take the emotion away from that word, because I think a lot of times, like, whether it be as creatives in the field we're in or as women, sometimes to overgeneralize that we feel that need to over-explain ourselves.
Yeah.
You don't have to explain. Like sometimes I personally sometimes just prefer something straightforward, rather than a million explanations for something, because you don't want it to sound like excusey. It's better to make it sound straightforward. And I actually think straightforward is more professional.
Absolutely.
Just to be like, I'm so sorry, I'm not available, but here, like you said, Holly, here are some wonderful people. And then you're not leaving them high and dry,
Yeah.
And it's the same thing for if you've already taken on these clients and you're working with them. Like I've had people come back to me and they're like, can you letter a leather jacket for me? Like, is that something we can add to our package? And I'm like, actually, like, no, because I like
not my jam.
I like don't have that skill set. And once again, like here's 3 other names, So it's easy to feel like just because the client wants to add another thing onto their wedding package that you have to take that under your umbrella, but you don't have to. There's so many other vendors serving them for that one day anyways. You just tell them like, I'm so sorry, that's not my area of expertise. You would be better served by finding these people, to assist you with that.
Well, and in the same vein, like let's say somebody comes to you and says, I would like calligraphy addressing, but you don't provide calligraphy addressing. Like you're not a calligrapher. It's like, you don't have to say no to them. You can say, absolutely, we can do calligraphy addressing, and then you can quietly go outsource that to somebody else. Like, they never have to know that you didn't do that. That's not part of your contract for them, that you have to disclose all of this. So in the same vein as what Cami always says, like, yes, we can do that. Here's what it's going to cost. It works the same way. Like, with this situation, you don't have to say no. You're saying no, but in like a really weird way. It's like like a yes way. Like, no, I can't do that, but I can find somebody to do that for you. And that's another way to phrase a no. You don't have to just give like a hard no for every request that comes across your desk if it's not in your wheelhouse.
Yeah, exactly. I know outsourcing never hurts. And that even includes like, I'll go so far as to say stock art and assets as well. I think there was like a big like mental block I had for a long time of like really feeling like everything that I put on these invitations has to be like crafted by hand by me or it's not worthy. And I was like, no, this is like silly. Like this one thing, like maybe isn't my strength to have this type of watercolor flower or whatever it is. Like I can pull in some of those assets to like boost up the other artwork I'm doing. Like I painted a beautiful like watercolor venue and found like a lot of joy and success in that. But like the flowers just weren't going to work out. Okay.
So you just find new flowers. And
exactly. Or I could have contracted out another artist to have done that if I wanted. And it depends a little bit on how you're advertising your services. Like Cami's services, of course, are advertised as that she paints everything. But if you're just advertising yourself as the stationer who's creating the invitation suite, and there's no promises of like every single piece of artwork being custom, you know, then you should use those resources to your advantage.
Absolutely. Yes, 100%.
Okay, Holly, my favorite line is coming up. My favorite thing that people like to say
I can't wait. I know it's coming.
It's just blank. Can you do this for me? It's just blank. And I get this a lot, actually, down here in Georgia when people want me to inscribe their Bibles. And it's like, it's just a name or it's just, you know, and people try to quantify it with what they think in their mind is like very small. And I'm like, no, you don't understand. This is like your family heirloom that I have to like make sure I don't destroy.
Not mess up.
There's like so much more than me just like taking a pen to it and like going for it and like seeing how it turns out, you know?
That sounds terrifying.
So like, how do we, when people are asking us things like that, how do we quantify that? I guess because it's really easy for us to like get wound up in the fact that like you're not valuing me appropriately, you know?
Yeah.
Like how do we respond to those situations?
This is why I like email. Because I can take a step back and I can like go complain to my husband about how somebody does not like appreciate my skill. And then I can take a deep breath and I can sit and just type away on the computer. But it really, I think it depends on how egregious the offense is. Like, how much did you belittle my profession? If it's just like, oh, it's just an extra envelope that you have to do. Like, okay, fine. Like, sure. Here's what goes into that. And you have to like educate them about like, well, we have to order one more invitation now. And we have to order one more reply card and more postage because I only budgeted for this. And then when you kind of explain all that goes into this, then at least you're feeling like I've educated them. And now they know that it's not just something. It feels better personally, but also like the client understands. So they may be more reluctant about asking for like, quote unquote, just something else in the future. So I think that's just kind of like the theme of this whole episode is like, it's all about the education and expectations.
Yeah. And people, for the most part, they just want to know that you can communicate in a timely manner. Like other real world example, you know, like Will and I are going through this whole rebuilding the retaining wall situation, which I try not to bring it up too much.
I can't believe that's still going on.
Yeah. Right? But like what we really wanted is we just wanted a contractor / like engineer. He's actually, the contractor is the engineer, which is actually kind of nice. that responded to us in a timely manner. Like, we wanted to guarantee that the person that we were working with like cared enough to at least get back to us, or at least let us know when that would happen. Because I think when you start running into serious issues, especially when I've heard people complain about their wedding vendors or things that went wrong on their wedding day, it was simply a matter of not being able to get in contact with them and not being heard.
Yeah.
So there's something to be said to that too, of like, by you even taking time to answer emails or to explain something in a certain way, that is still like benefiting you in the long term from a customer service standpoint. You know, even if it is to answer something about like, oh, well, it's just this. And it's like, well, I don't think you realize that like you asking me to do an order of 10 envelopes is like, that's like a whole thing for me. It's not just 10 envelopes, you know?
There's got to be some psychological thing, like you mentioned, about you just want somebody to get back in touch with you. Like when somebody just wants something, it almost seems like that's a very like basic need, that it's not, I just want something. It's like, this is something that should be so simple and basic that like anybody should be able to do it.
Yeah.
And so there's some weird psychological thing that's happening where people equate just with like, it's just going to happen this way.
Yeah, right.
Like, I don't know what it is, but that's an interesting like study to do, I feel like.
Yeah, just like exactly like the use of that word like in the English language of where it's like, even when I used it in that context, like I just want someone who will like contact me back. It's like that to me is like, is it too much to ask?
Yeah, like it's the most basic thing.
Which is why I think people do it. They use it in the same way when they're inquiring with somebody that they're trying to like quantify or say like, it's not that much, right? It's just wedding vows, or it's just like when someone told me, I had somebody inquire for a movie. It was a movie set or a TV show. They needed props for something, right? And they wanted, I know, it was kind of cool, but like I quoted out for it what I thought was fair. They wanted all of these letters to be handwritten. Yeah. And, you know, at the end of the day, to her, she was like, it's just handwriting. And I was like, well, it's not to me. Like, you know, to write all of these out.
If it's just handwriting, then why don't you do it?
Yeah, you sit down and you just write it, you know?
Yeah. So you're coming to me because I'm a professional and I'm an expert at what I do. So it's not just anything.
And anybody from like a TV show or a movie set, they want something in like 2 days. I guarantee you.
Oh, of course.
There is never a lead time for any of that. And I decided with that project, I was like, this is 100% not worth my sanity, and also 100% not my problem, because like you guys needing something in 2 days, that's just a no for me. So no, we're good.
No.
You can go find somebody else to just write your 10 letters that you need.
I love it.
Also, why do you need 10 for like one scene? But okay.
Oh my gosh. Yes. Like it's going to be on the screen for about 2.5 seconds. And
And I'm like, is that really like enough to, you know, maybe if you commissioned me to do like the How I Met Your Mother with Barney's, what is it? His book of plays, the playbook. I don't know if you've seen How I Met Your Mother.
I haven't.
Okay. But they had a calligrapher. They commissioned a calligrapher to like hand write these plays into the playbook. Would I have done something like that? Like probably.
Absolutely.
Not in 2 days, but like I think they had to plan a little more for that one.
I don't know. I might stay up all night for like my favorite TV show if they ask me to do some calligraphy. I know. I might make it. I might make it happen.
I would think about that
for a price.
They were making some sort of like historical fiction thing. I think it involved Eleanor Roosevelt or something like that. Cool. I think it was like a letter that was supposedly supposed to be written by her. And I was like, yeah, this is cool. But
that's really neat.
I don't think you understand what you're asking. A lot of times people don't understand what they're asking.
Right. Yes. Educate.
Okay. I'm curious too. Let's talk timelines, because Cammie and I have very different way of doing timelines, because believe it or not, Cammie liked having set deadlines throughout. And I was the one that just told them like, here's when you can expect them to be mailed out. And I never really gave much of like an in-between. Like I liked having that wiggle room. we've always laughed because you would think we would be the opposite because of like how
Yeah,
my brain
right?
works, that like I'm like, all
I'm
right.
shocked.
And every like 2 weeks, like this is happening, this round is happening, this round is happening. But I didn't like that. I just like telling them up front, like, we're going to do the rounds. They should approximately each take a week, no more than like 2 weeks. And then we can expect to mail them out on this date. And that's how I like doing it. But I know everybody has a different way of communicating dates and deadlines with their clients.
Yeah. I'm kind of a mix of the two of you guys. Like, there are certain steps that have an absolute firm deadline. Like, you must have your guest addresses to me by X date. You must approve your rough sketch by X date. But everything else, like my 2 proofs that I send out are like, it could take 2 to 3 weeks from the time you approve your rough sketch to get your first proof. And then like you have 24 hours to respond to that. And then I have a week to get you your next one. So it's not like really firm dates, but it does also like set a timeline up for the client where they're like, okay, well, like once we start the ball rolling, like it's going to take about a month to get everything into production. And then after that, it's kind of a free for all, honestly, because I just don't know how long anything's going to take.
Yes. Especially in this day and age, you never know.
Yeah. Like, here's your expected mailing date. But I love this little thing that I do. I add like a plus or minus 5 days to their expected mailing date. So like, I could mail it 5 days earlier than that, or I could mail it 5 days later, but it's up to like, it's my discretion at that point, you know, because if something's late that's out of my control, I want to have that wiggle room there.
Yeah.
So,
that's really smart. I actually really like that, because you're like, if I have it done sooner, like why wouldn't I go ahead and send it out? There's no point to wait until that date. But at the same time, if I need a little bit of like that extra time, you know, to get some envelopes done or like whatever it is, you've built that day in for yourself. And then you would just communicate with them as you get closer and kind of let them know.
Usually like the week before it goes out, I send over the USPS mailing agreement because I want that as fresh in their minds as possible.
Yes.
And it also kind of alerts them to like, ooh, get excited. Your invitations are going out in a few days. So read over this, familiarize yourself with this, and then get really stoked about your guests all getting their invitations. And it's kind of like ends it on a high note kind of thing.
Yeah.
Then they're like re-excited again. So I really like I wouldn't call it offboarding, but it's like an end to the project, I would say.
Yeah. Right. When you're wrapping everything up. And yes, we do get questions. That's one of the questions that Cammie and I have gotten before, of like whether or not, if people buy the USPS mailing agreement, do you put that in the main contract? Do you keep it separate? And I'm like, oh, you definitely keep it separate. I mention it in the initial contract. Actually, I added a clause about USPS shipping, and it basically tells them like, you'll be expected to sign off on a USPS mailing agreement at the end of the process that outlines everything to expect. But I don't go into detail about that in the main contract, because it's like you said, like having everything fresh of mind is so much better when you get to that part of the process.
Yes. Yeah. And I think I add a little line in like the email that I send out that is in like bold red letters. It says, I'm not mailing any of your stuff until you sign off on this. So it's in your best interest to read this as quickly as possible and sign it. So yeah. And actually I've gotten people that have messaged me after they've read it over, and they're like, I have to hear about these situations that made this like this particular portion a thing. Yeah. And I'm like, well, let me just tell you, this is not the first time that this has happened, kind of thing.
I think you've said you've added things since, Yeah,
because one of them was because of that crazy mother-in-law. But like all kinds of clients like that, like knowing that you can change your contract, add things to it. Like you said earlier, you can always add clauses to your contract. You just have to have like a good base. Like your business is always going to be evolving. And these clients that kind of like make you question your sanity a little bit, like they are the best teachers and the best reasons to update your contract, update your process, like all of these little things. I think I can also include Cammie in this. Like we all would not be where we are today if we didn't have clients that made us change our process. Like we wouldn't be as strong in our field if if every client we had was just perfection. There's
Mhm.
always going to be somebody that like makes you rethink the way that you do things. And that is good. We want that, because if you're not learning, you're not growing and you're not becoming a better business person. So
Yeah.
that just like totally took a weird long turn.
No, but it's like,
But-
it is so true though. And I don't know, I was just thinking about that it's always just better to over communicate. Like, even if you do think that you're bothering people, like
Mhm.
that you're making them sign one more thing or you're making them read one more thing, like to never think of it that way, to think of it truly like as insurance. It's in your best
Mhm.
interest and the client's best interest. Like, even though there were things in my main contract that they would sign at the beginning, like even when I sent them a new round, I would remind them every time I sent them a new round, like, you have 3 business days to complete this and return it to me. Please
Yeah.
make sure you do it in a timely manner so the project's not delayed, you know? Just
Mhm.
like reiterating all the principles that you set up front, continue to be consistent throughout your process and adjust where you need to.
Right.
Like what Holly said, you know, like, okay, and that I officially have a new clause for that reason.
Yes.
For that
Absolutely.
story. So,
Yeah, there's no shame in that whatsoever. Like,
yes.
at all. None. Like, we
Yeah.
all have those opportunities. It is an opportunity, I should say that. It's not like a problem. It's an opportunity to be better. And
Mhm.
we all have those opportunities to be better. And the only way that you're not going to be better is if you don't take those as opportunities. If you just like look at them and say, oh, I hated that. It sucked.
Yeah.
Let's just move forward. Like, you have to take those lessons and apply them to your business.
Yeah. And how can we, the last kind of question that I want us to like touch on and deliver for people is, I feel like we get asked this a lot, especially when people are in their early years. Like, well, how do I develop the confidence? Like, how do I have the confidence to reiterate this or step up to the plate or be the expert in my situation when I feel relatively new or I feel scared or a little bit of intimidation, you know?
Yeah.
Or like, you know, this person's like a little like wackadoo. Like, where do we get that like confidence from, like especially like early on, and how can we remind ourselves that it's okay to like take the reins, you know, be the expert, stand your ground? I'd love it if you had any thoughts on that.
I do have thoughts. I think I have so many thoughts. I do have thoughts, actually. I think the first thing is that you need to remind yourself is like, you are a human being and you're allowed to not know the answer to something. So if a client asks you something like on the phone or a Zoom call or even in an email, and you know that you're going to need to research that before you answer them, just say, I'm not quite sure. You know, I have to dig a little deeper into that. I'll get back with you in 24 hours or a week or whatever. But that right there like says so much about you as a business owner. It shows that you are humble enough to admit when you don't know something, which automatically shoots your confidence level up, like your client's confidence in you up so much more, because they're probably so like conditioned to just hearing an answer to something. So they know now that you care enough about their project to research it, which is like a huge thing. That's so important. But like also like become an expert in your field. Like approach a conversation with all the confidence that you can muster, knowing that you have the experience to back it up, whether it's years of experience, 6 months of experience, or just like, I read this on a website and I can back this up with, you know, facts. You know, it's all in how you kind of present yourself. If you use like language that's very, I think we should do this, or I believe this might be a good idea, like use strong language. Like if a client says, when do you think we should mail these? Don't say, I think we should mail between 8 to 10 weeks from your wedding. Say, most of my clients mail 8 to 10 weeks before their wedding. But if you would like to mail sooner because your guests are coming from Europe, let's mail 12 weeks out, or whatever it is. Like, it's all about the tone and the wording that you use.
Yeah. People can pick up on that really easily. That alone can change so much, even if you're newer in the field. Take some time to think about how you're writing something up.
Yeah. But I mean, you were obviously a new stationer at one point. Like, how did you get confident enough to, like really stand your ground with people.
Yeah, man, it's crazy to go back and like think about the earliest ones for sure. Because like at the beginning, sometimes you're not as good at standing your ground. Though I do remember like with one of my very first clients that we printed in letterpress, and one of their times, it was the time for the dinner party the night before, like the welcome party, had been printed wrong, not because of an error on my part. I had taken what the client had provided me, but because of information that was provided like to the client from the wedding planner.
Oh no.
So that was when I think the first time that I really learned to rely on my contract. Thank God that I had one, that they had signed off on the fact that this is going to print and I'll be responsible for printing errors. And actually the wedding planner paid for that one.
Oh my
to have those redone because she had informed them like of the wrong time. I guess this venue wasn't open until 10 p.m. because it was originally 8 to 10 p.m. and the venue's like, we're only open till 9. And so it was the hours were supposed to be 7 to 9, not 8 to 10.
Oh my gosh.
So that part of my confidence, I think, came because I had the contract to back it up. Like I totally think I would have been like backed into a corner at that point and feeling so bad, especially with this being like my first letterpress invitation suite that I had wanted so bad. But like early on, I got lucky with some like really sweet clients like early on that were like really friendly and loving when I was charging hardly a dime, you know?
Yes, the early days.
Yeah, you can get away with that sometimes. But I did do a lot of research. I asked a lot of questions. I listened to whether people were using Periscope at the time, which is so crazy to talk about.
I forgot about that.
Yeah, like when people would do Periscope talks or just information they were sharing in blogs. I think I was just kind of a sponge, and I learned to get really good at reiterating what I knew was like common practice and standard for the industry. And like you said, if you do that research, whether it's like Emily posts that you're visiting, you have certain places that can back you up and be like, this is what I'm basing this off of. But like, here's the honest truth. As soon as you've done one client, you have experience.
Yep.
Like,
it's true.
It's true. There's so much that you learn even from the first one, but there's still plenty of like moments that I like cried or like freaked out. I just think that like, unfortunately, it kind of like comes a little bit with the territory in the wedding industry. Like things are high.
Tensions are high
pressure. Will and I have been watching the Formula One documentary on Netflix. And that is also like high stakes, like high pressure situation. And I'm like, well, I'm not driving like $1 million vehicle
that I could die in.
But I do understand like that when you feel like you have so many people kind of like breathing down your neck, right? And like relying on you, and especially as the person who's getting the first impression of like the wedding out the door, that can feel a lot. It does feel like you're a bit in the driver's seat. It does feel like sometimes you're more of a planner than like the wedding planner at some points. Like, I don't know if you've ever had that feeling.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, I think also just like asking myself, like, what do I want my personal boundaries to look like? That helped a lot. Like once I gave myself the space to think like, what do I want my like day-to-day to look like in this business, and what don't I want, and what processes can I use to implement this? And Dubsato's had a huge hand in that, at least for me personally. Same, of the way that I organize things. Like that alone, we didn't even talk about client management systems in this episode, more like the emotional side of driving a client situation. But like that's just a that's a no-brainer. That's a deal breaker, right? Like I wouldn't advise anybody to be doing this kind of work without a system in place, a client management system that can keep everything or help you stay organized anyways. So
oh yeah, for sure. I mean, that I think you guys have done an episode on that before. Like that's its own episode all on its own. Just a good client management system is a big deal. It makes you feel more official. It really is like kind of what I was talking about of like how I personally feel better when I wake up and like do my hair and makeup in the morning. Like you'll feel better about your business when you also
invest in the programs to help keep it running.
Yeah, and feel in control. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Like you can take on a lot more work that way. When you have something that's kind of like keeping you on a certain track, or like that you can do like an overview of, oh, look, I have 17 projects coming up. Like I see those, I feel okay about that. But if they're just living on sticky notes everywhere, that's not really going to help your mental health, I feel like.
No, or your sanity at all. Yeah. So, yeah. But I think this is, I think overall, this is like really good. I mean, people are just like, they wonder things all the time. I mean, crazy things have happened to all of us. Like this episode honestly could have been just us exchanging stories.
Oh yeah, absolutely. It's like don't make a writer upset and they'll make you immortal in their books. Like don't make us upset or we'll do a podcast episode about like what a red flag client you were. I would never do that.
I was like joking with Will, like after the whole retaining wall situation is finished. I was like, I could write a book about this. I literally like, this is a book. Like there's so much like drama and intrigue in this situation. And I was like, my poor neighbors will be like immortalized forever. The ones that we like don't like.
Yeah.
I'm like, oof, they kind of have a little bit of like a say in the story. So yeah, that is funny though when you say that, like don't piss off the writers, don't piss off the podcasters. Yeah.
Seriously.
I try to be careful. I try to always be like vague enough, you know?
Yeah.
It's like,
yeah, you never know who's listening.
Yeah, you never know who's listening. But anyways, all right, you guys, I think we have reached the end of that episode today. Thank you so much for joining us and talking about client woes. And hopefully you have a little more of ideas that, first of all, it's normal. We all go through it. Second of all, just ideas of like how to cope, what to do in certain situations. But if you guys do have any more questions, you can always go over to bizbirthdaybash.com/Q&Cake. And don't forget, because Holly is being our wonderful, amazing co-host while Cammie's on maternity leave, if you guys are even inclined to think about joining the A to Z directory, please go to bizbirthdaybash.com/Holly so that you can use her affiliate link to sign up and her coupon code. And also, that page is going to have her amazing resources for stationers as well. We're going to put some links there for you guys too, so that you can see everything she does. There's a reason that she's here with us, because she knows so much and has a lot to contribute. And so, yeah, leave a rating and review if you want. You can do it on Spotify now, which is exciting. Not a written one, but you can at least give us 5 stars.
That does seem very weird that they would just do stars. Right? I'm waiting for the written reviews.
I know.
I have a lot to say in written reviews.
So we will see all of you guys next time. Have a good day.
Bye.
Bye. Hey guys, we just wanted to hop in and talk about one of our amazing resources, the A to Z directory. All of us have thought at some point, how did she do that, or how did she make that? And maybe you don't know where to start or how the heck to produce this amazing product you've dreamt up.
Well, the A to Z directory is the missing puzzle piece in your biz, you guys, seriously. So it's built in the form of a yearly membership, and it's your one-stop shop for finding suppliers and vendors for all the things. Literally where to print everything from custom invitations, greeting cards, mugs, koozies, acrylic printing, letterpress, custom ribbon. I mean, the list goes on and on and on. And it literally goes from A to Z. From acrylic printers to zipper pouches, we have it in the A to Z directory.
We want to help all of you search less and create more with this list of 300 plus vendors and suppliers. Don't worry, they're very organized. It's not going to be overwhelming and confusing when you join. And this membership also includes access to a private Facebook community. It's incredibly active and involved. And if you need a question answered fast, that is definitely the place to go.
Yeah, our Facebook group really is the best. You guys, everyone is so helpful in there. And we're in there too, answering questions you guys might have. So it's a great way to get access to us and ask us things without sliding into our DMs. So we're more likely to answer you in the Facebook group, just saying. Anyway, also in the Facebook group, this is new for 2020 and we're really excited about it. We are hosting monthly Power Hour Q&A sessions that are live, and these are only available to our A to Z directory members. So you can hop in with us live and ask us all your burning questions in real time and just hang out with us every month. And we do these at different times so you can actually be there live, and the replays are always available in the Facebook group for members.
This resource is priced at $147 a year, which honestly is extremely affordable and is full of so many benefits, such as exclusive vendor coupons for members only. And we would love to have you guys join. Seriously, it's kind of like our family and our tribe. So visit bizbirthdaybash.com/directory to sign up today and use coupon code podcast2020 to receive $20 off your first year. That's podcast, all caps, 2020 for $20 off your first year.
We can't wait to see you in the Facebook group.